All right, so this will be a quick video. I just want to show you how you can provide options to fetch. So when you run the fetch method, the first thing you always have to provide is the URL that the request is going to. But optionally, you can include an object here that contains key value pairs for the options you want to provide. So things like method. The default, of course, is get, which we've been making without specifying method, but you can override that or change that to be post. You can also include things like a request body, send some data along. You don't have to use this JSON.stringify, by the way, but this makes it a lot easier, so you don't have to manually make each of these a string and worry about quotes and double quotes and all of that. The other important thing is we can provide headers, so we can specify things manually. So let me just show you how that works. If we go over to fetch options example I've created, it's basically it's exactly the same code we had from last time. All that it does is make a request to this Bitcoin API and then print some of it out. And if we monitor it right now, if I go over to my network and then look at XHR and I refresh the page and I resize this a bit, we have our fetch that's made here, as you can see, no longer an XHR. This is coming from CodePen, by the way. So we have our fetch, and if we actually look at it, make this a little easier for you to see, it's a get by default. Okay, so all of that just to prove how it works by default. But now, if I change it by passing in the options object, and I say method is now post, and I save, I'll refresh. The first thing you should know is that this API does not have a post endpoint. So it's not going to be happy about me trying to make a post request to this. But that doesn't matter for our example, because we can see here, if I look at it, it was sent as a post. The status code was a 500, not good, but it was still a post. Okay, so that's method. We can also do things like send body along. And the way a lot of people like to format this is like this. So we'll have body is equal to, and you could just pass in plain data like a string, like this is the body, the request, just like that. And I'll need to make sure this is still a post because GET requests don't have bodies. Now we do this, refresh, we'll still get an error, 500 error, but if we actually look at the request, and I think we have to scroll down to see the body, here we go. This is the body of the request. So this is all just an interface for manipulating the request we're going to send. And as far as JSON.stringify, I'll just copy this over just so you can see how it's commonly used. So something like this, body, and then it's equal to JSON.stringify an object with some strings in it. And if we look at what's sent, scroll down, you can see it here. If we view the actual source, it's all strings. So we didn't have to manually turn that into strings. JSON.stringify does that for us. All right, so I promised I'd keep this video quick. Let's wrap it up. So you can provide an options object containing key value pairs of the various options. We've seen method and body. There are more. Those are probably the most commonly used, but there are more. If we go to MDN, I'll include this page in the resources. You can see we can also specify things like headers. So we can manually specify headers and their values. Or credentials. That's pretty commonly used as well if we need credentials for a request. But there are other things like redirect and referrer policy, signal. I have no idea what that does. But basically, if you want to learn more about these options and the various options that you can provide, you can read more about them on these docs. Okay, so that wraps up the basics of providing options for a fetch request.